Welcome back to the New Bridge Radio Show on WLTK-DB. Let's talk. I am your host, Kevin Mackey, and we are connecting you to what's next in your life. And we're here to remind you that you are important to this world, and we sure are glad to have you along on this episode of the New Bridge Radio Show. Remember, you can catch the show live on our station website. All you need to do is head on over to www.WLTK-DB.com and you'll be able to join the show live. You'll also be able to join the chat and you'll be able to ask questions of our guests and of me. Also, if you would like to get in touch with the New Bridge Radio Show, you can email us at thenewbridgeradioshow@gmail.com. We love to hear from you. We love knowing what you like about the show. We also love knowing if you would like to be our guest on the show because we love connecting with people who have connected to what was next in their life. Tonight on the New Bridge Radio Show, we are very lucky to have a guest who has helped many people all over the country connect to what was next. She is a successful podcaster and a brilliant author and writer. She is here to talk about her book, Live, Love, Engage: How to Stop Doubting Yourself and Start Being Yourself. There are 4 guiding principles in the book that can help you rid yourself of self-doubt, and we are very excited. Our guest tonight is Gloria Rand, and we are happy to have her on the New Bridge Radio Show. Welcome to the show, Gloria.
Well, thank you for having me, Kevin. I'm delighted to be here today.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you. I read your book over the weekend, and it was great. There were parts about it I was like, "Oh yeah, this resonates with me very, very well."
Well, thank you.
And I came to know a little bit about your story, and you had a rather interesting childhood because you were kind of the youngest, but you were kind of almost an only child because your siblings were a lot older than you.
That's true. Yeah. I'm the baby of the family, or as my mother used to call me, the caboose. Yeah, because my sister is 10 years older than me and my brother was 14 years older than me.
Mhm.
And as I came to learn later on, I think evidently I was a reconciliation baby. I think my parents were having some marital trouble and then reconciled. And 9 months later, I came.
Oh. Oh, that's interesting. Well, I'm kind of on the upside end. So my older sister and I, we have a little sister. It's not quite, a big of an age gap, but and what was interesting is we all ended up being, even though there's an age gap between us, we all ended up being really close. Um, but did you have the same experience with your siblings?
Um, Unfortunately, not with my brother,
Mhm.
because he joined the Navy when I was 6 years old, I think,
Mhm.
and he came back home basically when I was in high school, and so I got to know him a bit, but unfortunately, he passed away suddenly when I was a freshman in college. So I didn't really
Mhm.
get a chance to have a good relationship with him. With my sister, we really got to know each other after I became an adult, frankly, because, I was just the pesky little sister to her when she's a teenager, and I'm this, little brat she's got to tag along, that tags along with her. But when I finally, got through college and whatnot, then we were able to develop a good relationship and especially towards the latter years of
Mhm.
her life as well.
Yeah, I know, and I part of that story helped you to write the book. But I wanted to ask you, you went off to college and graduated, and you decided to major in mass media, and had the opportunity to work in television
Mhm.
and on the nightly business report. And I'm curious to know, did you like that job? Did you like TV?
I l I love that job. It was fascinating, and what I especially loved working there is that they gave you an opportunity to really grow, and
Hmm.
so I wasn't doing the same thing year after year after year. So when I was hired originally, I was the person, um, uh, typing up all the stock prices that would show up on the screen when someone's watching it on television and and the names of people, and so I I was in the control room during the show and I would be, putting that information up there. And then later, I did that for about maybe a year and a half, and then I became the stocks producer. So I worked with Paul Kangas, who was one of the anchors of the show at the time, and I helped him, you know, write his stocks report, figure out what were the big movers of the day. And then
Mhm.
eventually I became a writer for the show, and then I was a producer. So I was like the backup producer. So when our main producer would go on vacation or was sick, I got to fill in for her. So it was really interesting. And I also found it entirely ironic because what I initially majored in college was in business administration. And then when I was flunking out of calculus and economics, I was like,
Right.
I think I need to do something else. And then here I wind up years later working for a business show. So
Exactly. That's you know, you never really sometimes sometimes your majors work out in a way that's bizarre.
yeah, absolutely.
So you went on from that and and actually went into the world of copywriting, which is interesting. Tell us a little bit about that because you know there are a lot of people that are considering that type of career right now.
Yeah, it was we had an opportunity. My family, my husband got a really good job opportunity up in Orlando, Florida, because we were living in Miami at the time, and that's where Nightly Business Report was produced. And so when we moved up here, obviously I wasn't able to work on the show anymore, except I was doing some part-time work for a little bit. And I kept getting this letter in the mail that said, "Can you write a letter like this?" And and it was essentially an advertisement for a copywriting course, you know, to write junk mail, as we affectionately term it, you know. But I was, I something about that just, you know, just kind of stuck with me. And then I actually wound up not doing any more work for the Nightly Business Report. So it was like perfect timing. I said, I'm going to go ahead and invest in this course because, yeah, I love to write. I've always loved to write, even
Mhm.
before I worked for NBR, even as a kid. So I invested in the course. And then as I was learning to do, you know, writing these like long sales letters, I realized that everything was sort of moving online, and so I wound up taking a course in SEO copywriting. And I really liked that because I it sort of tapped into both sides of my brain, the analytical side where you had to figure out the right keywords that people use on, you
Mhm,
know, that they put into
mhm.
Google to make that website then show up on that search result page. But then I also get to be creative because you have to incorporate those words into copy that is actually appealing and not you know, just spammy. So it
Right.
was, yeah, it was a
And
lot of fun.
you know, just explain so SEO is something like a lot of web people who have websites, and myself included, get these emails, these emails all the time about SEO, and I've always looked at them and said, "What the heck are you talking about? I don't even know what that is."
Yeah, it's complicated. Well, it stands SEO stands for search engine optimization. And when I first started doing search engine optimization, it was actually a bit easier to do. So essentially you want to when someone goes onto Google and let's say they're looking for a web designer. Maybe they want to build a new website. And so they start searching web designer. And then if you're a company who does that work, you want your website to show up on that first page because especially because people rarely go past the first page looking.
Right.
So you really want to get that first page listing. But it's very competitive, especially now that it's the year 2021, considering I started in 2009. It's a lot more websites are out there now. So it's very hard. And Google looks for all sorts of different things. They use different metrics that they use to help a website get up at the top. And um, it's not as easy. When my first real success, it was great. I was able to put keywords in and it got on the first page and my client was so happy their phone was ringing.
Mhm.
Now it takes a bit more, but it still can be done, but it's a lot tougher now.
I believe you. Because the amount of emails coming in just to a site that I closed a year ago, it's just amazing. I'm like, I'm trying to figure out how to shut it down completely. Like people sneak in and get in, and I'm like, how the
Mhm.
heck is this happening? But anyway, so in addition to that, you also had um kind of a spiritual awakening as well. I know you kind of, grew up in a traditional way and kind of a Catholic background, but something started happening spiritually to you too. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's yeah, it's been an interesting journey I've been on. I would say for one thing, I originally was attributing it to when my sister was diagnosed with cancer, but I think in a way it really started when I began my business because it was at that point that um, I actually started meditating, and I
Mhm.
found I was going through the web and saw an email for a company that was called Centerpoint, and they were offering this technology called Holosync, and it promised to be able to you meditate as good as the monks do after 30 years of meditating or something. You have results just as fast, and I was intrigued by it, and I started. Um, uh, Bought their product and started meditating, and that sort of, I think, primed me for when 2015 came along. My sister was diagnosed with cancer, and unfortunately, it was stage 4 cancer. It was pretty serious, and a few months before she passed, I was meditating as I had been
Mhm.
doing, and this idea popped into my head that said, "You should write a book about love." And I'm like, I do online marketing. Where's this coming from? What do I know about love?" And lo and behold, it became the book because I, for some reason, still wound up opening up a Word doc anyway and was like, started making notes. Oh, love is an acronym. Okay. And so I started writing that. And then I got interrupted because my sister wound up being in the hospital, and I didn't touch the book for about another, probably almost 2 years before I went back to it. But it was an interesting journey because um, losing my sister was really hard and was like the
Right.
hardest. My parents had died, my brother had died early, but she was like the last link to my family. And
Right.
so it really hit me. And I think also because I did spend so much time, I tried to spend as much time as I could with her when she was going through chemo, and I was there with her when she transitioned. Uh, so it was, it was a difficult time to get through, and I'm so grateful now because so much good has actually come out of it, um, in especially the book, because
Mhm.
now I realize that in the process of writing it, the reason I was given this idea to write a book was because I needed to learn it for myself. I needed to learn these lessons. Um,
Right.
as often happens, isn't it? Is that we wind up, teaching what we most need to learn, and so that
Right.
was the case for me.
And it sort of started the process also kind of started in the midst of a pandemic, right?
Yeah, especially, yeah, it was last year, sorry. I'm getting a drink of water, but um, yeah, last year when the pandemic hit, because I realized it was like, "Okay, I've gotta get this done.
Mhm.
I've gotta sit down and do it," 'cause I'd been working on it, a bit in 2019, and then I realized it was like when things were happening, I had to do it, and it was one of the reasons I even started my podcast too, because I thought the podcast would help me actually write the book, give me
Mhm.
an opportunity to sort of flesh out some of these ideas, and, um, but yeah, last year was such a crazy year. Um, I
To put it
mean,
mildly.
I know, yeah, to putting it mildly, but it was in a way one of the most amazing years for me personally, because I really did go through not only writing the book, but I was also having, as you said, this really spiritual awakening. I started doing, I think think I even hinted at it a little bit in the book, but I don't think I really got into detail with it. But I've been doing for the last year, I've been doing something called channeling light language, and which um, has been an amazing thing for me. But even before that, I found myself I started writing songs last year.
Mm.
I wrote like 2 songs, and which I hadn't done since I was maybe 7 years old. Um, and so there was just, for some reason, just this I can't even really explain it, because it seems like now, compared to like where I was last year compared to this year, it just seems like I was in this totally different space, and I don't quite even know how to explain it anymore. Um, but it was a very, very interesting time.
Right. Well, but you know what's interesting about that is all of us understand
Mm.
because because we've all been in this weird vortex, and there have been some good things that have definitely
Yeah,
come from it,
yeah,
and there have been some other things that have happened that have not been so good.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it was, yeah, it was like a crazy time with all this other stuff that was going on in the US. I mean, with all the politics
Hmm.
and the George Floyd, and I um I was doing the podcast. I wound up even doing, I committed to doing like 1 episode a week. I started doing like 2, because I just wanted to be able to reach out to people and have, different people doing different interviews. And
Hmm.
um, yeah, it was a very, very strange time. And this year has still been an interesting year too. It's been an interesting transition year, I think, as well. And just also trying to deal with this. And um, I think mostly because I haven't had my kid around. My daughter my daughter left last year, and she moved to Hungary, and,
Oh. Hmm.
which has been interesting. So we're truly have been empty nesters here in my house the last year, and so that's been,
Hmm.
um, different to deal with as well.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, so but I'm grateful for everything that's happened, because it really has, I think, even more given me a chance to practice what I learned, which, we still have to, I'll have to tell you a little bit more as we go on here, a little bit more about what love actually stood for, because I know we didn't even get a chance to do that yet.
Oh, yeah, definitely. We'll definitely talk more about the book.
Yeah.
You also in your book mentioned the Course in Miracles and
Mm.
Marianne Williamson. And I think a lot of us who have been in a spiritual journey or a spiritual path have come across Marianne Williamson at one point.
Mhm. Yeah, I'd gone to a counselor, and she recommended that I do the Course in Miracles, but she recommended that I just read the lessons, to do those daily lessons that it
Hmm.
has in there. And so I did spend like a year doing that. And I think, yeah, I think that's what I was doing in like 2019. And so that kind of dovetailed in. And yeah, that really made a huge difference in really opening my eyes to different
Hmm.
possibilities about what I believe, because it's definitely
Right.
shifted
Oh,
over the
oh,
years.
right. That book made me a more compassionate person
Mhm.
in a lot of ways. I found it on accident in 1998, I
Oh,
think.
wow.
And I was at home for Christmas break, and the book kind of leapt out at me, and I was like, "Well, this is weird." but but anyway, that's what it's kind of a spiritual journey in itself. But
Mhm.
we are going to step away for just a minute, and we are going to take a brief break, and we'll be right back after these messages on the New Bridge Radio Show.
Looking to launch your new masterpiece? Then try something new with Moonbow Publishing and Publications. At Moonbow, we have a strong desire to serve authors in a powerful and meaningful way. After all, you've poured your heart and soul into your writing, and we fully understand and respect that. Remember this: you will own the copyright to your work. You will have the final say on your work before published. Even after all of that, we've saved the best for last. We won't take a percentage sold. Nope, not a penny. Excited about MoonbowPublications.com yet? We thought so. Take advantage of our company's services like book editing, formatting, and covers, publishing, and photography. Moonbow Publishing and Publications has everything you're looking for in a company. Remember, we will not keep any commissions. We are a boutique publishing company focusing on spiritual, health and wellness, and personal growth genres. So come and see what we can do for you at MoonbowPublications.com. That's MoonbowPublications.com. Moonbow Publications, a new kind of publishing company.
Welcome back to the New Bridge Radio Show on WLTK-DB. Let's talk. I'm your host, Kevin Mackey, and with me is my great and fabulous guest, Gloria Rand. And Gloria, before the break, we were talking about your book, and I love the way the idea for the book came in a meditation, because so many people are at that bridge a lot of the time where they'll get a like a word like, maybe you should write a book of about love, and for you, you're like, what? And I know a lot of people that were in that condition, and as you were writing the book, you began to discover that love was actually an acronym.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it really, well, it's interesting. It actually came, I mean, that very first day the idea came, I just didn't truly understand what it meant.
Mhm.
So that took writing it. And I think also that's why it took me so long, frankly, to write the book, is because I had to start learning it for myself, even without even actively writing it, but to just start understanding it. Um, so the L in love stands for let go and let God. And as I say in the book, it's not really a new concept, um, but it really was something that I had to learn to let go of my need to control things and to be able to put my faith in God. As I said, I grew up Catholic, but it was more of a, what they call a cafeteria Catholic, someone who kind of picks and chooses, what to believe in.
I've never heard
And,
that before.
oh, yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so I didn't really have a, huge, strong foundation there. And also growing up in a household, my dad was an alcoholic, and my mom was, uh, had really good temper, and of course she was married to an alcoholic, and so now I have huge compassion for her. And at the time I was just a kid, and trying to deal with all of this, and so my way of making sense of the world was to really try to be in control, to be strong. I was actually kind of put in that role of being a caregiver even at a young age. My mom had a lot of health issues, and so I was always kind of helping out around the house and things. And so having to learn that I needed to let go, and especially even in my business, that was like a big lesson, because anyone who is in business, when they start a business for themselves, they tend to want to do everything themselves, because
Mhm,
it's your
mhm.
baby and you don't want to let anybody else
Right.
in to help you. But unfortunately, you have to if you want to
Right.
grow. You can't keep doing everything yourself. At some point you've got to be able to delegate. And so that was another lesson that I had to learn. And again, I think that was part of um, one of the good things about starting my business, is that it really forced me to kind of look at some of the beliefs that I had, beliefs about money and things that I had inherited from my parents as well, and to kind of take another look at that. Um, the O in love stood for open your heart to receive, and that was really about kind of goes along. They all kind of dovetailed together nicely, and this was again being willing to let people help. Being able
Mhm.
to open my heart to receive, frankly, to receive love in all of its different permutations. Because love can be just someone helping you out. It can be um, having a client, receiving money. I share one of the stories I share in the book was about my sister. She was a massage therapist, and
Mm.
one Christmas, she had a client who wanted to give her a huge bonus, and she called me on the phone, going, um, "I don't know if I can accept this. It's like she wants to give me $1,000," and I was like, "Wow, that's awesome! She wants to give
A
me such a
thousand
huge
dollars.
bonus! Yay!" I know. I was like,
Okay.
yeah, really. Um, but it was because again, my sister grew up in the same household I did,
Right,
even though we were
right.
10 years apart. I think my parents were still having issues when she was growing up as well. So she didn't really value um, her gifts and what she was able to do. And so I, we talked it out, and she realized that, yeah, she needed to be able to receive this gift because that was how her client was showing her love to
Right.
my sister. So, again, another thing to learn. And of course, again, that then ties in with the V in love, which was value your uniqueness. And I still occasionally have trouble with this one, and I realized even as I was writing the book last year, I was still having trouble with this one because it was when I'd gone through the rough draft, and then was typing it up. It was like that section was the smallest. I had
Oh,
not much
really?
information there at all because I was still trying to figure it out.
Mhm.
And but I've been fortunate to have worked with, um, not only doing my own spiritual work of studying A Course of Miracles and meditating, and I've attended some personal development workshops, but I've also worked with coaches, and I worked with a great lady in this last year. Um, who really helped me with that. She was big on what she would call tags, your talents, abilities, and gifts, and helping you to see them and to recognize them. And so that helped me a lot to really start valuing the different things that I brought to the table because I that was something again that had held me back in my business because I
Mhm.
was reluctant to charge what I was worth,
Oh, I know.
and
Eh,
and
you know what's interesting about that
yeah.
is a lot of people who, work for themselves have such an issue with that, don't we?
Mhm.
When I started in Reiki, I was if people couldn't pay me, "Oh, that's okay." 'Cause it's all service. But, and then, it really doesn't help you at all, which is why I love the fact that you address it in the book about value your own uniqueness because you did all the time, you went to school, you got all the training you needed, and you need to value your gifts, like you said, your talents and gifts.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely, and that is, you someone who does Reiki, I think that's especially people in, spiritual, modalities, especially, I think
Mhm.
holistic modalities, especially because they get into this because we got big hearts,
Right,
and you wanna help everyone, and you also have to recognize, though, that there needs to be some sort of energy exchange. It can't just be you giving and not receiving
right,
because I had a different coach who reminded me of this fact is that if you're not charging and you're not even promoting yourself to those people, you're doing a disservice to them because they need what you have and they need to be able to compensate you for that. So it's super important to, yeah, value yourself, not even monetarily.
right, exactly.
Yeah. Um, and then finally, the E in love stands for embrace your divinity, and that really is acknowledging that, um, we are divine. We are spiritual beings. And my mom had always, called me her, a gift from God, and had always said that we are, like a child of God. And and again, in just doing, I've done, so much different reading, besides Marianne Williamson. I've read a lot of like Wayne Dyer and Abraham, Esther Hicks things, and all of this different philosophies, I guess, and trying
Hmm.
to understand spirituality. That I really just have come to believe that we're all connected, and that we are all part of God.
Hmm.
And so one thing I know my mom used to say is God didn't make junk. And so
Hmm.
that means we are not junk. We are valuable. We are worthy of all of the peace, joy, and abundance that we can possibly want to have. And we're not made to suffer, even though sometimes I know me still. I have this habit, unfortunately, but I'm still working on it. So, and I'm a work in progress,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
that's okay.
But it's interesting that you're talking about this. There was another. Speaking of the divine, there's another writer that is kind of in the same line as Esther Hicks and Abraham, and it's the psychic medium Paul Selig. And Paul Selig it is and was a New England academic.
Hmm.
He wrote plays and taught at a university, taught plays, but on the side, he sort of did channeling.
I love it.
And what was what was interesting is he kind of had an experience like you, where the guides that he worked with to channel kind of prodded him to write a book.
Hmm.
And what was weird is he had been writing for a TV show, and the TV show got canceled. And he was kind of having a fit with the universe. He was like, why did this have to happen to me? And he called his friend, and he was like venting to her, and his friend is like, hey, what are your guides? Because he could channel these guides. What do your guides have to say about this? And he channels the guides, and I'm paraphrasing here, but the guys were like, "Oh, we're very excited with this opportunity. We would, if now that you have the free time, we would like to write a book in 2 weeks."
Oh, gee.
And Paul Selig was like, "What? That's crazy. No one can write a book in 2 weeks." And they were like, "Oh, well, we can. We're advanced beings." And so he ended up writing this book called "I Am the Word."
Oh,
uh,
wow.
about these advanced beings telling us about what you just mentioned about divinity, and
Mhm.
how we are part of a divine spark, and how they're describing how the earth is actually wrapped in fear, that there's a band
Mm.
of fear surrounding the earth, and that if we can pull ourselves away from this fear mentality and this fear band, we can change the earth.
Mm. Oh.
And, and so it kind of coincides with the E that you mentioned in your book. And um, I love the point that you made in that about embrace the divinity. Uh, because it's something that we all have trouble with, because we
Mm.
all like I was grew up in kind of a Christian background, but not a cafeteria Catholic. You know what? My family was more fundamental. They
Mm.
had, my
Mhm.
mother was an evangelical, and
Oh,
we
okay.
went to a big church where the singing, and so I came from that kind of background, and
Yeah.
you're taught to believe that you're flawed.
Mhm. Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and, and being Catholic, you had to go to confession and,
Hmm.
and confess your sins, and yeah, and that was the interesting part of A Course in Miracles, where, they talk about sins, and I don't even remember the exact terminology, but it's not like not what we were, taught growing up, and the importance of forgiveness, but to really just, yeah, to understand that we're not flawed people at all. Yes, we do have free will, and so sometimes use that free will, and it can maybe get us in trouble, or or we make mistakes, but it still doesn't change fundamentally who we are
Right.
inside.
Mhm.
And if we need to be able to recognize that other people are that as well, because then it will help us to be able to communicate and to be able to get along with other people. And but I really want to look up this book, because that sounds interesting, especially this concept of being wrapped in fear, because yeah, you certainly see that, and that is why so many people do have trouble communicating with others, communicating
Mm.
with ourselves, and
Mhm.
even because that was another big part of my journey, was learning how to trust my intuition and really listening. And it is sort of interesting that I actually did, you know, I listened to that voice, and I did heed it, even though I thought it was crazy, but for some reason I still went ahead and was like, "Okay, I don't know, I'll just jot stuff down," and then I kinda went on my way. But I there was, I guess, I think, and again, I think it's because I'd been doing meditation that I was more open to that concept than if I
Mhm.
had been, 10 years earlier. I probably definitely would not have dealt with it at all, and would have ignored it. But I think because of that, it helped me see that. And then, of course, that day when I got the email from Hay House offering a writer's boot camp to teach me how to write a book, I was like, okay, I guess you really want me to write a book, God. Okay, fine.
Right.
I'll do it. I'll do it.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I find it interesting that there were little steps along the way, but were there moments where you're like, "You've got to be kidding me! I can't do this."
Oh,
Did you
yeah.
have times where you wanted to quit?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, because I would, well, just even getting started for a while, I would be like sitting in my computer and I'd be like, okay, let me see if I can try to do this. And I would be like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say about this. I have no idea. And then a friend of mine, um, asked me, she's actually, she does like angel channeling, and we were doing a session, I think, and at the end, we were talking about this, and I was telling her how frustrated I was that it's like I know I need to write this book, but I don't really know what to say about it. And she said, well, where are you the most happy? Where do you like to go where you're the most happy? And I was like, well, I love going to the beach. I love being by the waves. And she's like, well, then why don't you write the book there? And thankfully, where I live, it only takes me an hour to get to the beach. And so I started doing that. I spent Friday mornings, I would go to the beach and take out my journal, and I would start to write. And some weeks I didn't write. Some weeks I wrote about everything else that was going on in my life except the book.
Mhm.
Sometimes I would just read, but then other times I would just sit there and go, "Okay, God, what do you want me to say? What does this stuff mean?" And things would come out. And so I definitely had a partner in writing this book. It was definitely um, not only divinely inspired, but divinely written part of it as well, because uh, I couldn't do this alone. I definitely had help to do it.
Right. You made a great point in the book about writing with pen and paper. And there's something different about that than typing on a keyboard, which I found really interesting, and I think really true. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's because I think, again, it was like, I was trying to type, and it wasn't, you're not connecting. But when you can
Mhm.
sit down and have a pen in hand and just scribble sometimes,
Right.
I think there is this more direct connection between um, heart and the head, and then coming out with the pen and being able to write it down. Um, it's Yeah, and I know I've heard other people say it too, that talk about this, that it's it's just more powerful to be able to do it that way. And I go back later and I typed up what I wrote, and then I
Mhm.
can go back in and then clean it and edit it and add more things to it. But that first draft, I think, to be able to handwrite it is really powerful.
Right. You know who else believes in the pen and paper is Joan Collins.
Oh.
And Joan Collins is actually quite a prolific writer and very good at it.
Mm.
but a few years ago in my own journey, I learned a meditation to do automatic writing,
Mm.
and uh, and when I try to do automatic writing at the keyboard, I have such a hard time doing it. But if I I'm a huge compulsive shopper of office supplies. Like if I see a composition book, I buy
Yep.
it. Like if people saw how many composition books I have, I would be embarrassed. But anyway, so if I have a composition book and a pen, and do the meditation to do the automatic writing, for some reason it just flows easier, and I can actually do it. And then when I look back at those writings, I'm just shocked. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that came out of me, or where that came from.
Yeah, I can relate, but my only problem with that sometimes, because I have done that as well, is then sometimes when I've gone back to try to read my writing, it's
Mhm.
not the neatest thing, and it's
Mhm.
hard to read,
Right.
and so I'll be like, "What the heck did I say here?" Um, and I will tell you, I had one, and I think this was not last year, it was in 2019, where I really had, a very freaky, experience that I think I've maybe heard other people have, and I had never experienced it myself and hadn't really had it since. But I was just not feeling well that day, and so I was sitting outside in the sun and trying to see if I could feel better. And then for some reason later that afternoon, I went back to came back up to my office, and I did actually, did I do it on the computer? No, did I do it on the I forget if I did it on the computer. No, I guess I did handwrite it, yeah, because then I tried to decipher it later, and I just, like, did, like, automatic writing. I mean, it was just like I was, I don't wanna say possessed, but it was like this just fury of writing came out, and it was really amazing and very profound, and hasn't really happened like that since, but it was just really an interesting situation. But unfortunately, again, because I was writing so fast, I can't really read half of it because I'm too darn messy. So I guess maybe I should have just gotten out a tape recorder and spoke it perhaps, but I don't know if that would have helped. I don't know.
Sometimes that can. I do hypnosis as well, and
Mm,
I always have the recorder play. Recording these sessions, and sometimes it's profound. Like
mm,
what people, our subconscious really holds a lot of information
mm.
and is capable of doing a lot for us. So what I found interesting is, as we get to the end of the book, um, and you've discovered these acronyms, and you can kind of, as you're writing the book and going through and explaining all of the steps, you can kind of see self-doubt kind of disappearing as you're going through the book. Did you what was that experience like for you when you finished it?
Well, um, tremendous relief and pride for one thing and
Mhm.
being done with it. But I was even before I started writing the book, I was talking about some of these concepts, and I was doing some presentations about it. And and one of the things I started doing too was I my mom, when I was a kid, used to get the Daily Word from Unity, and again, like not too long ago, a couple years ago, people kept mentioning it to me, and then I heard like I had heard Mike Dooley speak well, it was at this Hay House Writers Workshop, and he talked about speaking at Unity churches, and I was like, maybe I need to go maybe check out a Unity church. Maybe I need to do this. And I'm thinking
Mhm.
this is maybe my mom is, kind of sending these signals or something, to have me check it out. But I started reading the Daily Word, and I started actually doing a Facebook Live every day where I would read that day's Daily Word. And I did that for I think about 5 weeks where I did it every single day, even on the weekends. well, what I found is even though I was scared to death the first time, and because people, I wasn't sure how people would respond to me talking about, God and spirituality on Facebook when I've been doing SEO copywriting and social media for so many years. But people were very nice about it. And I started looking forward to doing them every day. And it was like the highlight of my day. And and I think that's part of it is because, and also I was working with some coaches at the time too, and just, really encouraging me to lean into this message, to really embrace it. And yeah, as I got through and writing the book and that, I really realized that it's like, this is what I'm meant to do. This is what I'm meant to talk about, because whenever I talk about this, it lights me up. I mean, at one point I was going to do a LinkedIn workshop. While I was writing the book, I was having these plans to do a LinkedIn workshop. And I finally had to cancel it because it was just like, I just don't want to talk about that stuff anymore. It's like, I know it's useful and I know I can teach it, but it's like, it's just not where my heart is. My heart is this love method and being able to help people, because I just felt so much more aligned now, and that I can really be more comfortable in my own skin. I've learned how to be more comfortable. And like I said, I still waver at times, but compared to where I was, I'm so much so much improved.
Exactly,
And
right.
so that's, yeah, so I'm really blessed, frankly, that God gave me this message for me so that I could learn it, and so that then I can help other people do it, because I know there's a lot of people out there too who struggle with this. And I want to be able to help them if I can.
Exactly. So, do you feel like there's another book coming?
Yeah, I mean, actually, even while I was still writing the first one, I was thinking that I was realizing that this this first book is sort of the inner work, and I'm thinking the next one is going to be more about now showing up in the world. So like, I know for sure that the E is now express your divinity. So where it was embrace it, now it's going to be expressing it. And I've kind of gone back and forth with some of the other letters, but yeah, but I think I still need to do some more living it before I can
Mhm.
actually write about it. So just like I had to do with this first one. So it's probably about another year away, I have a feeling. So yeah, there will be another one.
That's great because I love that kind of story. Because, a lot of people think, oh, the universe has this great life for you and all these blessings, but you're over 50. Can't do it. And I like that when you put aside all of that intrepidation and you just went for it despite all that. And look where you are now.
Yeah.
And look at all the doors that are opening for you. Is
Absolutely, yep, and I'm at the end of my 50s, so I just turned 59, so, but I plan on living another 50 years. I figure I'm just hitting middle age right now, so I got a
right.
lot of living. Yeah.
Right, exactly. I think I'm in the same boat because I joke around about this all the time. I kind of think I might be in my 90s before I decide to leave, and people are like, "Oh, I hope not." Hey, so one other question I want to ask you is, you have got a great podcast, and tell people how to find your podcast.
Well, it's on pretty much all of the other major podcast platforms, and it's got a really easy name to remember. It's the same name as my book, Live, Love, Engage. So, yeah, I'm really happy with this iteration. This is my second time doing a podcast, because I had
Mhm,
done one actually in 2015. I was doing one while my sister was sick, and that one was all about online marketing.
mhm.
And I was doing it 5 days a week, and I burnt myself out on it. I think I quit after about 8 months or so, but I've been doing this one now almost 2 years, and I'm loving it. Um, because I get to talk to really interesting people, in
Mhm.
fact, I might have to have you on the show, frankly.
Oh,
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
you yeah, I think you'd be a really excellent guest, and I love talking with people, and the premise of the show is that we share practical advice from a spiritual perspective to help entrepreneurs live fully, love deeply, and engage authentically.
Mhm.
So it's business advice and personal advice, and I really, really am enjoying it. It's like the highlight of my day when I get to interview someone. I don't know that way about your show, but that's the
Oh,
way I feel.
I I'm actually shocked sometimes at how much fun it is. When we started this podcast, at first we were a podcast and then Tom came along and really convinced me to do a live show, and I was like, "Oh, I don't think I can." But anyway, but now look at me, it's like he
That's
has a hard time shutting me off. But, but I find it, to be amazing in that I've had the opportunity to talk to, people from all over the world,
Mhm.
and it it's a and it really surprises me. You know what's interesting? There's a after you do it for a long time, there's an intuitive part of it. Um, I I always feel like I have to spend the weekend before the show with my guest and all of their material, getting to know them and forming a connection. Do you find that yourself?
Yeah, and what is one of the blessings about it, but also I just one of the nice things about it is that I guess it's a little bit good. It's nice for my ego is that I've had people compliment me afterwards on like, "Oh, I'm so glad you asked me those questions." And it really has the process of doing it, I have gotten better. I
Mhm,
really am leaning into my intuition and really it's taught me to listen better, to
mhm.
listen to my guests and to really pay attention to them. Because I think even at the beginning, sometimes when you start, you kind of have an idea about what you want to ask, and so you're kind of focusing more on that as opposed to listening to the guest's answer. But I've really made an effort as I've gone on and doing this to really listen and and then ask something else that not necessarily what ideas that I had in mind to ask, but let the conversation flow more naturally. And we've had some really good shows, especially when I think the other person plays along with that and,
Right.
and is good about it.
Exactly, exactly. It always goes smoother. In the beginning too, I always had like I'm so afraid. I had like a big script just in case.
Yeah.
Because I have a Virgo midheaven. So
Yeah, we got, we Virgos, we like to be organized, but
right.
yeah, it's good.
So you also have a great website too. Tell everyone how to find you on the web on your website.
Absolutely. Yep. It's pretty easy. You just go to gloriarand.com, and that's GLORIARAND.com, and you'll find information about my copywriting services as well as coaching and it was interesting. I was listening to one of your other guests recently that you were complimenting her on the website, and she said her daughter designed hers. You know what?
Yes.
My daughter designed mine too.
Oh, really? Wow, that's
Yes.
amazing.
Yes, my daughter is a web designer. She's fantastic, and I'm looking forward to having her actually redo mine again, probably in about another year, because I really do want to move into doing more coaching, having the copywriting being a little bit still important, but not quite as a big part of my business. And so, yeah, I'm very proud of my daughter, and she's become this digital nomad, and she does web design wherever she is. And right now she's in Hungary, and that's where she's doing her work. So
And she's learning to speak Hungarian, isn't she?
yeah, well, yeah, she had to learn because she had decided that she wanted to get dual citizenship because my grandparents are from Hungary. And because her plan last year was to travel all around Europe, and she figured it'd be easier with a Euro passport. So she spent 3 months there, but had to come home in March. And but now she wound up going back, and she's actually Well, she's actually in love because she
You
met
say that
a
like a mom.
I know, I
Oh,
know.
she
Well,
thinks she's in
she was
love.
practicing Hungarian with someone, and it turns out this young man, so he was practicing English and she'd practice Hungarian with him, and so now they're actually living together in Budapest. But he's very nice. We've had lots of Zoom calls, and we've gotten to meet him over Zoom, and so she's doing very well and is very happy, and I'm very happy that she's found someone, and she gets to practice her Hungarian, especially with his parents. So,
That's funny.
but now I'm learning it too. She's inspired me to finally learn it because I didn't do it when I was a kid, so I'm learning it too.
Nice. See,
Yeah.
and I love that. Don't, do things, always do things like, and don't let any kind of anything stop you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. I've got let's see, I'm over 500 days consecutive on Duolingo now, even though she left me all her books and she's like, really, Mom, you need to learn it that way. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I'll do it eventually.
Nice. Nice. Well, let me tell you, it has been an absolute treat having you on the New Bridge Radio Show. And I loved your book. I'm going to go and write a review later this week on Amazon because I thought it was outstanding. And thank you also for explaining what SEO is so that when we get those emails, we'll know what they are.
Absolutely. Yes.
Now, coming up next week on the New Bridge Radio Show, we are going to have Sue Wilhite on the show. And Sue is a business coach and a sound healer. She likes to say she's a business coach with a side of sound healing. You won't want to miss that coming up next week on the New Bridge Radio Show. And I want to thank all of our listeners for joining us this week and being a part of our show. And remember, you are important to this world. And now go ahead and prepare yourselves for Haunted Voices Radio with Todd Bates. And we'll see you next week on the New Bridge Radio Show.